you go through valleys. You go through, your wife has had a warfare. But yet, somehow, in every life, some rain must fall.
That's right.
It's
That's
life.
right. Absolutely.
It's life.
That's right. Absolutely. It's how you handle it. You know,
That's
the enemy
right.
wants to stop us. Whatever he can do, if you stop, you're giving him a victory. You have to keep going. Do not give him that victory.
Amen.
Keep going, and God will always bring it. The promise is he will always lead us to triumph. It doesn't say everything will look like triumph or everything will feel like triumph, but he'll always lead us to triumph. So that is the key. And usually what I find is when things are most attacking, when it's the worst times, that's when you have to all the more push through, because beyond it is where the greatest victory is. And so we cannot give the enemy victories, and he cannot stop any of us if we don't stop.
That's right.
God will always lead us forward.
It's good.
I just had I wasn't planning on saying this, but I'll just say this. The man who I was who asked me to go into ministry, who I met when I was in college, as I just came to the Lord. He just came to the Lord, Jewish believer named Gary Selman, about 20 years older than me, businessman, evangelist. He's the one who asked me. He had the vision for Beth Israel. He asked me to come. He had a radio show. Oh my goodness! I didn't know you have that radio show around New York City called the Two Nice Jewish Boys.
Is that you?
That's me.
That's
that's me. About 20 years ago.
Rabbi,
about 20 years ago.
Rabbi,
everybody.
That's about 20.
Two Nice Jewish Boys.
Yeah, the hair was a little bit. Marriage has pushed that in. But the thing is. But he just went to be with the Lord. Really a best friend for 35 years.
Yeah.
And he went to be with the Lord on the day of the Shemitah. And
what?
And it was, we always sound the trumpets on the Feast of Trumpets. We say this is like a rapture drill because we're getting ready to go up. Lord, well, we sounded the trumpet, and he went to be with the Lord within an hour, and the thing is that it's a great victory for him, but boy, everything happening at once, in that way. But, the Lord promises always leads us to triumph. And he never disappoints.
No.
But you have to keep going to get to that triumph. If you stop before that, you may never see it. You have to keep going. And it will always lead us. Yeah.
What do you think on that exact date?
Yeah, it's, a million things. A million
God
things.
always gives you the date, the moment.
There's a lot to,
and speaks to you.
Yeah.
So you have to know somehow God was doing something that is in his will, but boy, it's tough.
And it's victory. Actually, this Gary's Hebrew name was Gedaliah. There's a Gedaliah in the Bible who was a friend to Jeremiah. And it says he went to be with the Lord on, the tradition is he went to be the Lord on the Feast of Trumpets the same exact day, when he was named. God has a reason for everything, but I have never seen God disappoint. The worst times of attacks have always led to the greatest times of victory. When I first came here, I came here when our building was totally flooded. We had no more building for 7 weeks.
Right.
3.5 feet of water over every part of the ministry. It was just when the Harbinger was coming out.
Right.
And I knew, and people were saying, "What's going on?" Well, I said, this is a good sign.
Yes.
Because the enemy does not waste his time.
Right.
And so if you're being besieged by the enemy, it's a good sign. And that's when, right after this was over, came the greatest explosion of the ministry and the Harbinger ever in history. But it's like that. If we want to be people of victory, we cannot avoid the fight. We cannot despise the fight.
Wow.
We have to take it on like David did, say, I'm running to it, God's with me, and whatever's going to happen, I'm going to win in the end.
And everything that's happened, the Harbinger is based on the 9/11 event. And I'll never be able to thank you enough for unveiling the Harbinger to me. All of the, I hear people say, well, Rabbi said we're going to have this happen on this day or this going to happen. And you never said it. I know that because you were very careful. You're not a date setter.
Yeah.
And I know that. But here's the thing. Everything that rabbis taught us is based on biblical days and the biblical events.
Yeah.
And, there's a preacher around here. He makes fun of me all the time now and said, and made fun, not just of me, but made fun of the blood moon. There's so much going on, Rabbi, I know this is a very important show today. I know this with all my heart.
Yeah.
And I know that you have a lot to say about
Everything.
everything
Yes.
and what's happening in the
Yes.
world.
Yes.
More has happened in the last year that you've been coming here and in the last month in biblical things.
Yes.
Deal head on with, what's happened and where we are. I think it's very important
Yes.
that we do.
Very.
First of all, God calls us to be vigilant and calls us to be watchmen in the end times and
Yes.
to warn and to give warning.
Yes.
And if we do not give warning, we are held accountable. And secondly, we're living in the end times. These are days of apostasy. These are dangerous, the Bible says, perilous times of judgment. So we need to warn. It's better to warn, and it's better to be safe than sorry, number one.
Yes.
The other thing is, at the same time, as far as timing is concerned, I've said, you've known this every time I've been on here, I've said we cannot be dogmatic about timing or say something has to happen at a certain time or day. We cannot put God in a box, because when you put God in a box, he gets out. And I've said that again and again and again. Every single time. I mean, so much so it was monotonous, but I said, okay, now I have to give my caution again. And the caution is twofold. One, it could happen at these times, but nothing has to happen at a set time or a set day or even in the parameters of the Shemitah. I've not only here every single time I've said it. That was my one concern with when Steve Strang said, okay, this book. I said, well, this is my one concern. I don't want people focusing on dates. So I will put in the book, here's the principle, but this does not have to happen at this time. So
right.
I don't think I could have said it any stronger. So I always caution that, because we cannot, God is above us. He's sovereign. So that's the first thing. Now, and there are people saying, well, there has to be something on September 13th. I said, well, there doesn't have to be. The stock market wasn't open on September 13th. Now, there could have been things, but chances are that wouldn't. The cycle doesn't have to manifest the same way each time. At the same time, having said that, and having said that monotonously,
yes.
if that's a word,
Yeah.
At the same time, we are at a very dangerous convergence then and now, and I believe it is wisdom that we be prepared. In case anybody, was thinking about this, if you bought health insurance and then a year goes by and you didn't get deathly sick and you didn't have to have an operation, you don't complain saying, oh, I wasn't deathly sick and so I couldn't use my health insurance. I'm upset. No, you have that insurance. Well, for those who are prepared, you're very much into preparing here at Morningside. For those who are prepared, you are prepared, and you are better off than you would have been, number one. And it's not like health insurance that's all gone in the year and you have to pay again. You have that. It's preserved. So I believe that what I said about that is, you have to be led by the Lord in those things, but it's wisdom to always to have essentials on hand.
Yes.
It is wisdom. For all the things we pay for insurance, it is wisdom to have that. So, it's like the virgins and the oil. They didn't know when it was going to happen, but they had to be ready with that, and those who were ready and those who had the oil were more prepared than when the day came. And of course, the most important preparation is to be right with God, which I've said continuously. But I believe that is wisdom. Now, having said all that, something that was missed by people focusing on one day, and that is this. The most central, predominant template of the Shemitah that is in the book again and again and again is not a day crash, which happened twice, but is specifically this: a rising stock market, bull market, when it comes to the Shemitah, turns around, hits its peak, begins to descend and descend, not over a day, but over months. It's a longer, bigger phenomenon. That is the central template. It happened again and again and again and again. Did this happen in the Shemitah of 2015? The answer is yes, it absolutely has happened. The stock market, which had been rising, bull market for years when the book came out, reaches the Shemitah, May 19th, hits its peak in the Shemitah, turns around, reverses momentum, begins a long-term collapse. I've shared that the pattern of the Shemitah is that the tendency is that towards the end, that's when things get more dramatic. I've said that again, that's general pattern again. As we approach Elul, the month of Elul, heading to Elul 29, what happened to the stock market and around the world is its descent became violent, volatile, dramatically so. Near the conclusion in August, it produced some of the greatest day crashes in stock market history. It produced Black Monday. It triggered stock market crashes around the world as the Shemitah was heading to that time. It produced the 10th largest day crash in world history, the 8th largest day crash in world history, all in August. Produced the greatest stock market intraday crash, over 1,000 points in world history. It wiped out 16% of the British market, wiped out 18% of the French market. Something here, remember something I've shared, that there's been a switch, that America has been the strongest economic power on earth, but that has switched in the year of the Shemitah to China. Well, China has become the world engine, the engine of the economy. What happened to China? The Shemitah of 2015 dramatically decimated China in this. I mean, if we were in China, we wouldn't be talking about this. People, you wouldn't have preachers saying this, because what happened in China, which is the engine of the world economy, this alone, it wiped out 40% of China. I mean, it is almost half of their entire financial realm was wiped out by this Shemitah. That'll, if nothing else happened, that's what we tend to be very American-centric, but this is what's happened in the world. This is the engine of the world economy. It wiped out from India 4,000 points, from the Brazilian market 12,000 points.
Wow.
From the peak in America, from the peak of the market to Elul 29, which is, it would wipe out approximately approaching $2 trillion were wiped out. Not billions, $1 trillion were wiped out of the American financial realm. In the world, it's been said, we had a figure before, but it's much worse than that. In the world, the Shemitah of 2015 has wiped away $11 trillion of the world markets wiped out.
Trillion.
Wiped out. And that's just in the last quarter. That's just from the peak to Elul 29. So this has been, if nothing else happens now we're in the Shemitah's wake, and we're going to talk about where we are, but if nothing else happened from this point on, that alone would be incredibly significant. The fact is, it has followed the same template of the crash, the long-term descent, and the wiping away. That has already happened. And so now more can happen. But this pattern has happened. 1966, you had the Shemitah of 66 was called the forgotten crash, stock market crashes. Shemitah of 1973, same thing, crash, recession, world recession. Shemitah of 1980, recession leading to financial collapse. Shemitah of 1987, just a few months of, again, the stock market going down, and something called Black Monday at the same period. Shemitah of 1994, the great bond market massacre. The bond market, twice as big as the stock market, collapses. Shemitah of 2000, 2001, you have the bubble collapsing, you have 9/11, you have and the Shemitah of 2007 and 8, and the Shemitah of 2015. The same pattern has been manifested. And is this the fullness of the great shaking, which I believe is coming? No. But this is the Shemitah. This has happened as in there. I believe greater things are happening. Now, we are in the wake period now of the Shemitah. Now, at times, in the Shemitah's wake period, so at the times, you may have even greater collapses, or the continuation of the collapse that began before that. Could, doesn't have to, but that could. But it's a dangerous period, and we have also seen the shift. I said at the beginning of this, if nothing else happened but the shift of America, the American age beginning in 1871, when America became the strongest economic power on the planet, when it supplanted the British Empire. That began in 1871. Everything else about America began then. That age has been ended by the Shemitah. The age from 1871, it is no longer the strongest economic power on earth. That is a gigantic shift in itself. So these things, I believe we are racing to judgment. That has not stopped. The harbingers have not stopped. The harbingers have continued since the book, and there's much to share about what has happened, even since I was last here. All those things, we are in dangerous periods. I mean, no matter what anybody's belief is, whether they're Baptist, Pentecostal, you have to be blind not to see that we are racing to judgment in this country and in this civilization. And and the signs have appeared and are appearing. So all these things. So the fact is, God is very exact, and nothing had to happen this year, because God is not going to always perform as we say. But the fact is, the template was absolutely fulfilled as the Shemitah, and at the same time, we are since in the Shemitah, and since last time America has crossed even greater lines than ever in our history, which I will get into, but are very important and very signs of it. So for those of you who are who seek, who are anxious for God's coming, who seek for the signs of the times, you are well prepared and well done, and stay prepared, stay vigilant, because God is God, and He is not mocked, and these are the last days. And He is exact, and He is precise, and He does things according, as I've said every time I'm here, according to His timing. But we are in the season, and we need to be prepared.
Amen.
And absolutely.
Rabbi, we need what you're saying today so
For
bad.
life.
Nobody would have made fun of you if you spent $10,000 on health insurance for 1 year. Nobody would have. Nobody would have. You know,
No.
it is basic. And the other thing we're talking about also about not giving up before that victory.
Yeah.
You know, think about Ruth. You know, think about
Yes.
Ruth, and she's
Aw.
clinging to Naomi, and Orpah also clings to, but then Ruth says, Naomi says, don't, and Orpah turns away. And actually, the name Orpah speaks of the turning away of the neck. Talk about the people who turn away before the victory. She turned away. It says, but Ruth clung. Now imagine if Ruth didn't. And Ruth was being told by Naomi, give up, give up.
Yes.
But she didn't. She stubbornly clung.
Yeah.
If you look at the woman who came to Messiah and said, Lord, my daughter is sick, and he says, is it good to throw the bread to the dogs? Now, most of us, if we went up to a minister and they said that, we'd walk away offended.
Right.
Most of us would be offended by that, but she didn't. Then instead, she goes back. She says, Lord, even the dogs get the crumbs from the children on the bread. I mean, who would have said that? She didn't give up. Now, if she gave up after that, God was testing her. He allows the enemy to test her. Is your faith really strong? Are you going to stay? Are you going to stand? Are you going to give up? Sometimes God appears to say no when He means yes. But He puts it up there so we'll keep knocking. He'll put it up there so we'll keep going. So He's kind of saying, hey, guy, are you going to give up now? Because it looked like I said no. Because I offended you. You couldn't understand what I did, and you walked away. No. And so she pulls on, and then He says, so great is your faith, woman. I haven't even seen this in Israel. Your daughter is healed. So the key is sometimes God said, we don't understand what He does at all times. I mean, Abraham could have said, when God said, offer up your son Isaac, could have said, are you crazy? I mean, I can't follow you anymore. Right. But he trusted. And once he did, he said, no, Abraham, that was just a test. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to see your heart. Are you going to stand? And when they stood, comes the blessing right after. So hold on. There's something I would call, I've done a message on it, I'd call it holy chutzpah. There, in the Jewish, many of you know it. The word chutzpah sometimes means nerve, but it can mean stubbornness. It can mean almost obnoxiousness, but meaning that, hey, no matter what, you got nerve. You got it. Well, God wants it. There's a unholy stubbornness, but there's a holy stubbornness. Yeah. God wants us to have a holy stubbornness. That's what Ruth had. That's what this woman had. That's what the woman who pressed in to touch the hem of his garment. This holy chutzpah, thinking the enemy's going to do all this stuff. I'm not going to let that happen. When the apostles were in prison, the angel takes them out and says, now go right back to the Sanhedrin. It's like the enemy tried to stop you. That should make you dig in your heels and say, oh yeah? Because of that, I'm going to be all the more out for God. I'm going to be all the more strong for God. I'm going to be all the more for God because of that. We have to have holy chutzpah. Yeah. God will honor it.
That's
God will honor it.